All right, it looks like we have a healthy number of people joining us today for this session. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 6th annual Bryan School of Business and Economics Back to Business event. We're really excited to have you with us today. My name is Amy Yandel, and I'm the Graduate Student Career and Professional Development Specialist in the Bryan School of Business and Economics. We're going to go ahead and get started, but first, I'd like to review our Zoom webinar guidelines. First, if you have a question during the talk, type it in the Q&A. We may take questions during the session, but we'll also take questions at the end of each session. Number 2, for all other comments, please use the chat feature. Number 3, please remember to use kind and considerate language in the chat and Q&A. And lastly, if your question is detailed or the answer is very complicated, we may have to follow up with you after the session due to time limitations. So with that, I'll turn it over to our session moderator and my amazing colleague, Bramley Crisco.
Thank you. This time I muted myself. I kicked it off back to business in a total mute mode in the last session. So thank you all again for being here. I'm so excited. Happy back to business. We're back to business here in the Bryan School, and we're thrilled to have all of our students joining us for this presentation. And I'm even happier to work with these fine folks you see here on the call, who are all partners to the school, as well as we have 2 MBA candidates with us to share their internship experience. And we're going to talk about maximizing your internship and your search and lots of things that go into it, because it's such a critical part of business education to have an internship. But I can't remember if I actually introduced, but I'm Bramley Crisco. I work in corporate relations, and I'm going to be the moderator this morning. I'm going to introduce these folks briefly and then let them each share, particularly our business partners, about what they do in their day-to-day job. Lizzie Tasuda is the director of Campus Greensboro and has been a partner to the school for quite some time. And she's going to share about their program and what it looks like to be a part of that, and the organizations and all sorts of exciting details that I will not share directly. I'll let her share all of that. And then Travis, thank you very much for joining us. Travis has worked with Cone Health as a career navigation consultant, and has a really great perspective from also an amazing partner to the Bryan School. Cone Health we have lots of partnerships, projects, internships, you name it. We get to work closely together. So we're thrilled to have you all. And then our other special guest, obviously Amy is here helping. She is my teammate here in the external affairs team. And then we have Zara Hassan and Tyler Carrier. They are both MBA candidates and work here in the office with us. And I'm thrilled for them to share their experience, because I know they both had amazing internships and have some details they can share with students as we move forward. So I'm just going to kick it off. And as we go through, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end. And I think it's going to be really informational and exciting and lots of fun stuff to talk about. So I'm going to stop talking and let you all. I'm going to start with Zara. Zara, will you tell us a little bit about your internship and where you did it, and what your role was, and then just a little bit about your search as well, how you ended up there.
Yeah, so this summer I worked at Contour Brands as the supply chain and production planning intern. My main projects was to analyze, create, and optimize reporting around inventory. And this included creating a SKU analysis report in Power BI to optimize the inventory level by creating a better way to visualize the sizes the brand carries. In addition, I did some process mapping for the operation team and was part of an internship project with other interns where I was able to work outside of my department to do some research and formulate a recommendation on the brand's e-commerce websites. And just to give a background of my internship search, I went through Handshake, LinkedIn, and specific companies' career pages. I also went to the career fairs offered by UNCG to have a one-on-one conversation with recruiters to just try to make a connection early on. So when I did apply, I had them to reach out to. So with my internship search, I wanted to have an open mind on the department and industry I wanted to work for, but I knew I wanted to work in the analytics field. So when I did apply to Contour, I immediately reached out to the recruiter on LinkedIn, just showing my interest of the internship. And then I had an informational interview with someone who worked at the company before my interviews. So just to get more background information about the company. And after I did my 2 interviews, I was able to work at Contour. And then overall, my internship experience this summer has been great. The program was really great. There were events for just to connect with with other interns, as well as weekly seminars to get to know more about different departments in the internship and at Contour.
Thank you, Zara. Let me just, all those things you just said, there's so many things that just made me so happy to hear you say. I'm going to highlight some of them. One, that you did proactive networking. So when you were starting your intern search, you were out there looking at recruiters, connecting on LinkedIn before you ever applied to the company. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So doing informational, that makes me so happy, so important, and I'm sure very helpful. And then the idea that you had, did direct outreach and pursued those introductions at career fairs, also helpful. So just the idea that this was a multi-step process, it wasn't just one thing you did, but a lot of different things. And then circling back around to the beginning of your description, you mentioned words like Power BI and data visualization and these things. Were those things you'd done before your internship?
Not really. It was a very new experience for me, and I really wanted to get into the data analytics field. So having that experience and working in Power BI, which is a totally new skill that I didn't know before, was very great, and just something that I took out of that internship.
Those are all just, what an amazing description. So that is a great way to kick it off. I love all the things, willingness to do something new, put yourself out there and network. Those are all really exciting. And so Tyler, I know you also had an amazing experience, and want you to share some of your details about your process and your internship and how you got there.
Sure, yeah. So I actually worked for Lincoln Financial this past summer. I worked there in the medical data analytics department. And really my role there was a little bit of data analysis and a lot of software engineering. My day-to-day tasks was working on automation tools for their underwriters. I won't go into too much detail on that, but just trying to make their lives easier by creating some different calculators so they don't have to search through all these guidelines all day. And then I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with electronic health records, but we were finding a solution to efficiently process those. And we made a lot of progress on that during the summer. So yeah, the internship was jam-packed. It was awesome. I had a really good time and a very good experience. As far as finding the internship, just like Zara, I did utilize a lot of different resources to find what I was looking for, which was mostly a data analyst and software engineering position. I ended up finding the position on Handshake, which UNCG does offer, so make sure to take advantage of that. I applied for the position at Lincoln. Someone reached out to me, and I went through a series of 4 interviews. It was quite a lot. And one of them was one of those automated ones where you kind of answer questions online without an actual interviewer. But yeah, so as far as my goals for the internship, I really had 3 goals going in. The first one is I really wanted to gain sort of a clarity on what I wanted to do long term, mostly in the sense of, did I want to work for a bigger company like Lincoln Financial, like a corporation, or maybe sort of a smaller company like some that I've worked for in the past. That was my first goal. And the second one was I wanted to develop relationships and connections with the company. I wanted to be able to meet people in my area and see maybe if Lincoln was a good feel and maybe a good fit for me in the future. And developing relationships was obviously a big part of that decision. And lastly, I wanted to contribute to meaningful projects. And that's something that I made very clear early on. I didn't want busy work. I wanted something that I could get into right away and, make a difference in the company and the way things were done on a day-to-day basis. So I really just wanted to put my foot forward on that and make sure that, what I was doing was important. And I think that's really important when you're working in an internship role. So yeah, that's just a quick overview. That's all for me.
My gosh, you guys could not have kicked us off better. There's so many themes here that we're going to keep talking about, but thanks for sharing that as well. I know both of you worked in analytics, and that's certainly a field that we just talked about, rock star jobs and career potential. That's certainly one where there's lots of career potential. But a lot of what you all are talking about applies to any internship. You know, the idea of being able to make it through 4 interviews and sit through that video interview, and those skill sets are really important, and part of having your internship is figuring those things out. And I know, Ty, that you did mock interview, you practiced for those things, so also important. So there are a lot of themes that we're going to talk about, you know, getting the perspective of both students and then our external partners, because it's really important and good information to meet in the middle. But you guys' overview of your internships and how they came to be was just really excellent. So thank you for sharing that. Lizzie, I would love for you to give, I know your program there at Campus Greensboro is huge, lots of moving parts, but some of the folks who are on this webinar listening may never have heard about it before. They're new to the Bryant School. And would you give us an overview of what you do and kind of why internships are important? That's a huge question, but would you kick us off that way?
Sure. First, I want to say how impressed I am with these 2 students and their internships. It's so great to hear how meaningful of experience you had. And you obviously really added value to your organizations, and that's just music to my ears. So kudos to y'all. Well, my name is Lizzie, and I direct a program called Campus Greensboro. We are a nonprofit initiative of the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce, and we're focused on helping students like all of you get connected to paid internships in our city. So we work with about 60 different companies. This can be small nonprofits to large global corporations, to startups, to kind of everything in between, who are looking for local talent, and we help them get connected to great student talent. In addition to helping forge those connections, we also put on a 10-week summer program. So as students in our program are interning with all these various organizations, we're also meeting as a cohort once a week. It's about 120 students on a good summer, on a non-COVID summer. So 120 students-ish, we meet together once a week for mentorship opportunities, for networking receptions, for professional development opportunities, leadership training, all types of things to really help you get prepared for the workforce. As far as, you know, the importance of internships, I mean, as you can hear from these students, you know, they're gaining experience that if they didn't have an internship and they were trying to just go into a full-time role after graduation, they may not be as prepared. I think internships help in a lot of different ways. One, of course, is it gives you that professional experience to put on your resume, right? That's kind of the obvious, but it also helps you test drive maybe different types of careers. So there are, you know, you might go into an internship thinking you really are interested in one area, and you might get into the internship and realize, this is not my favorite, or I like this part, but not this part. And that experience is so valuable. You want to learn that in an internship way before you learn that by jumping into a full-time role, where you might feel kind of stuck. So internships are valuable for a lot of different reasons, but that's one that I think a lot of people don't really think about.
Absolutely. And Travis, I would love for you to share with us about what internships look like, what they mean to Cone Health and their hiring processes, and just an overview of the organization as well, because there may be folks who are new to the area and they don't know Cone Health. So we'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, Cone definitely has a brand in the community going all the way back to when we used to manufacture denim. So it's exciting to hear from our interns from the VF and Contour brand space, because that's where the Cone family came from. But Cone is the largest system in the area. We have, oh my goodness, right now it's definitely been an interesting hiring situation during the age of COVID, but typically anywhere between 13 to 14,000 employees at any given time. A huge portion of those are RNs. I think we have 5,000 to 6,000 RNs working at Cone at any given moment. But that leaves all these other non-clinical spaces, all these business and operations oriented positions that we need to be able to do business, to be able to provide healthcare to the community. So I get to work in this really cool area of human resources. If you go right down to the EUC and visit your career services center or visit your career office in the Bryan School, they essentially wanted a replica of those types of services offered to full-time employees. The whole idea being that we could help keep and retain talent, which is just one of the constant challenges that we've been facing over the years. So as far as our internship program, so we at this moment heavily leverage Campus Greensboro. So I cannot say enough about the value of Campus Greensboro. When I was a career counselor at UNCG in the Career Center, I was telling everybody, please go look at the offerings that are available there. Like the level of positions, the infrastructure around those internships through the chamber are incredible. It's my goal to switch over to more using Handshake for our other offerings throughout the year so that we can supplement our amazing Campus Greensboro partnership. So my goal will be to use Handshake. At this moment, I think a lot of times folks will set up internships on a case-by-case basis. So another huge shout out to proactive professional networking. We have lots of leaders at our organization who are more than happy to offer internships. They just don't know it yet. But if you reach out and you share what you're interested in and you share your enthusiasm and what you're hoping to accomplish, there's likely going to be lots of opportunities for you. And like I said, way beyond some of the clinical spaces that people typically think of when they think of a healthcare system.
I think that's so true, and something I definitely want to highlight. I call it the business of healthcare, right? That the business operations is such a massive part of delivering incredible patient care, but sometimes it's one that doesn't get seen very often. It's functioning behind the scenes. So there's lots of opportunity for business students in healthcare organizations. So I just highlight that for sure. One of the things that you just spoke to when you talked about, different ways to get an internship. One thing, Lizzie, I do want to cover. I know we often talk about internship recruiting calendars. I found that has changed a little bit. They seem to be, there are opportunities all along the way. But would you talk a little bit about the recruiting calendar, particularly for the roles through Campus Greensboro?
Absolutely. So it's never too early to be looking for an internship. What we've seen as employers are looking earlier and earlier for summer interns. If you're looking at summer 2022, they're going to be posting in the next month for those opportunities. And that's one reason why UNCG has such great fall career fairs. And that's because all those employers are looking for both full-time, but also interns. And so it really depends on the industry as far as their timeline goes. Campus Greensboro, because we work with all different types of industries, we start posting internships in September. And then we run postings through March. So we will have some employers who will be looking for interns in the spring, but the majority of them will be posting and looking before Thanksgiving. And I think a lot of times students get a little caught off guard with that. They don't realize how quickly it all happens and how quickly employers are looking. So you don't want to miss those opportunities. So really just kind of depends on what you're looking for. The way our process works is we work with, like I said, the employers kind of on their own timeline of when makes sense for their recruiting, but we post their internships for 6 weeks at a time. So they'll be posted for 6 weeks and then you will apply. They receive your application as you put it in. So you don't want to wait till that 6-week mark. You don't want to look at that deadline and say, oh, I have until this time to do this. No. Do it immediately right when you see the posting, because they'll receive those applications and they'll be interviewing people in the process, right? So they're going to be looking as they come in, they'll be interviewing, and they might already have that position filled by the time that deadline hits. So don't wait. So then what happens is our employers will, we submit all of your application materials to the employers. They review, they select who they want to interview. Typically, most of our employers do have a 2-step interview process. And most of the time it's a phone screen and then an in-person interview or potentially on Zoom. And so it just kind of depends. We do have a couple employers who do a little bit further, a little bit more, maybe not 4 interviews, but a lot. And so you may go through a little longer of a process. And then, they're trying to get you in place before the spring happens because they want to feel confident that you're, they have an intern in place. And then they also know that you are looking, and top talent gets swooped up fast and they know that. So they don't want to wait.
That's exactly. So thank you for echoing that. It happens really fast. I think Tyler and Zara would say that they started their MBA program, the next thing they have their internship and we're there. So that's something I would highlight for students who are listening. Please do. We've mentioned Handshake a couple of times. Keep an eye on Handshake. Make sure you've got your information there updated, that you're, looking at job postings on multiple different platforms and preparing yourself to be ready to apply for those. So as I watch our clock, our time is speeding by. I want to move to the next section. Zara, I'm going to start with you. Just talking a little bit about what was the work setting for your internship, and even some really practical details like, how did technology get handled? How did you communicate with managers? What did that look like in your work setting this summer?
Yeah, so my work setting was mostly virtual. I only went to the office probably twice. So everything was done virtual. And the way I handled that was just having a space, like an office setting, making it as real as possible for myself, because I did want to have that professional office experience. So just making it as real as possible inside my own home. And then just having a great communication with my manager. We connected every morning just to go over the day and what my expectation would be. And then anytime I did do any work or any task he had for me to do, just going over it with him and then asking for feedback and how I can improve as I go through my internship. So those, just having a great communication and making sure that you are on top of everything, making as much connection as possible with other people in the department and not just my manager, is how I try to improve my virtual work setting.
Can I ask you something quickly about that, making connections? Did you drive that connection? So did you do the outreach, or you saw people in meetings and then you did outreach, or how did you make the most of that?
So I was putting meetings it was like a 3:30 meeting every single day with planning managers. And what I did was try to have an informational interview with each manager from those meetings and just trying to connect and build my network, as well as when I did have my overall internship project with other interns, we had 2 people who are our advisors. So building those connections and learning about their roles in the company. So I reached out mostly to speak to other managers and just understanding everything.
That's great. So you were very intentional about that. You had that as a goal. That I appreciate hearing that. Tyler, you want to talk about your setting and your technology and how all of that worked for you?
Sure. So my entire internship was online. I never was able to meet any of my coworkers in person, unfortunately. I still enjoyed it, and it was still an awesome experience. They sent me all the equipment ahead of time and had everything set up. As far as your workspace and, basically just try to be distraction free. Some people can handle working in their room 5 feet away from your bed, and, some people can't. So it really just depends on who you are as an individual and where your distractions are. If you can't focus in your room or in a certain space, like, I think it's very important to find a space where you can really focus. And don't be afraid to take breaks. When you're working from home, it's still fine to take breaks. Just don't let that last too long, and don't let something take your attention away you are at work. So I just wanted to make that note. As far as communicating with my manager and my teammates, like I said, we worked completely online. We used Microsoft Teams, which was very easy and straightforward. I had weekly meetings with my managers, tons of meetings throughout the week. As far as reaching out to my fellow coworkers, basically, if I had a quick question, I would just send them a quick message. If I had a couple questions, I usually sent an email. And then if I just had a lot of questions and I really just needed time to work through them, I would just go ahead and try to set up a meeting. And usually they'll be very flexible with that. And you can always talk to your coworkers and see what they're most comfortable with as far as that goes. For networking and building relationships, obviously this is completely different in a time that we are now. But networking is so important, especially when you're in an internship position. Really, really important. So even if you're online, still find ways to network. A lot of internships offer like outside of work meetings, like little fun events. I know a lot of times they can be kind of corny and maybe not the most exciting, but it's not always just to be there to have fun. It's a good opportunity to meet other people, other students. So I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of that and connect to people on LinkedIn. Every single meeting that I was in, if I saw a new face, I would just quickly write their name down. And, if I felt comfortable enough, just connected with them on LinkedIn. And if there's someone that you think you could connect with on a personal basis, just reach out to them and say, hey, can we set up a meeting and talk about what you do? I'm really interested. When people have time on their schedule, like they really do love to meet interns and people who are, willing to listen. So yeah, that's about it.
Well, that's great. And again, talk about being intentional and connecting. And it's just, I love to hear you guys say that. And it is an extra challenge in this virtual world that we are in these days. One quick question and follow up, and then I'm going to talk with our employer partners. But how did you know you were doing a good job? Sometimes in a virtual setting, how did you know you were doing what you were supposed to in your internship?
I guess I can hop in on that. I think just like consistent communication with my manager. I had various projects that I was assigned to, and if I ever made like a lot of progress on a certain project, I made sure my manager knew where I was along those lines. So like I said, I did a lot of software engineering. So I could see the code and what I was doing, but he couldn't always see that. So if I ever finished a big portion of what was going on, I would tell him and let him know, make sure he knew that. And I would say, hey, could you go in and look at this and make sure that this is the idea that you have, and that I'm implementing it correctly. So I really just think that communication is really important. As far as like overall performance goes, Lincoln in particular did a performance review at the end, just to kind of explain, what they thought of you in certain categories. They're very honest and straightforward, what you could use improvement on. This actually took place halfway through the internship and towards the end. So that was really awesome. So yeah, I don't know if you want to say something, Zara.
Yeah, so same with Ty, because it's the communication, as well as anytime I presented something to my manager, I would directly ask for feedback just to know that I'm actually doing what is expected of me. And then at the end of the internship, we also had a performance review, just going over what I've done and what's my goal, if I have achieved the expectation of my manager. So just that communication was very important to understand what I'm doing and if I'm doing it well.
That's great. Thank you. And I appreciate your insights, because I do think that's important to ask for feedback if you're not getting it, and look for it and use it if you do get it. So Travis, I'm going to switch just a little bit and talk to you, about, obviously you're in a healthcare setting, but for your interns, business interns, what was their setting, and are there tools that Cone has put in place to make sure that communication is happening? Is it different today than it was now, I say 2 years, however long ago?
I know, right? It feels like the time period that will never end. It's the era of forever. But very, very similar to what you're hearing from these interns here. Everything's virtual. I think Cone was even a little bit more restrictive, because any facility that we had that was patient facing, no interns. We even pulled clinical interns out of the setting. So imagine nursing students having to learn to work clinically on virtual simulators instead of getting to work directly with patients. It was that difficult to endure. So yeah, we always want to try to facilitate better communication between leaders and staff. I think one of the important things to note is that you won't always find that the communication is as robust as you'd like it to be from the employer side. I think with the larger the organization, the easier it is for little pocket cultures to develop, where some leaders are very in tune with the competencies that we expect from our leaders, and some play it a little bit more fast and loose. So even though I hope that everybody has a great experience, like it sounds like these interns had, where it was a lot of proactive communication from their leaders, from their internship supervisor. Don't be afraid to reach out and solicit that feedback. So yeah, Cone definitely uses Teams. Really highly prioritize getting our teams together virtually to at least touch base on a regular basis. So I think most teams are recommended to meet every other week, and that way we can kind of just keep an eye on each other. But the challenge is that we're all adapting to this new environment. Working virtually is not something that most of us did. I think our IT department were the like the main group who, as soon as we switched to working from home, they were like, that's fine, we do this already, we're cool, take our building and do whatever you need to do with it. So we're always looking for new ways to improve communication, but that's why we love getting interns too. Love hearing ideas on how we can do better.
Exactly. The idea that it works both ways. Our interns inform business organizations and have this amazing level of new knowledge. So I appreciate hearing that works both ways. Lizzie, I know that you all in the past 2 years have had several different methods to deliver programming, networking. What are you seeing? You know, what is it, a mix these days, or what are you seeing with that today?
Yeah, so in 2020, I was just looking back at our numbers. In 2020, out of all of our students interning with all the different organizations, right, over 70% of them were fully virtual. But in 2021, it was a third. So a third were fully virtual, a third were hybrid, so sometimes going in the office, and a third were actually fully in person. And so I think that just depended on the safety and just depending on, you know, the company culture itself. I think we're going to see more in-person internships this upcoming summer. The more I keep hearing about it, of course, that's always subject to change. But now I think people are feeling a little bit more comfortable. You know, in summer 2020, it was really a culture shock for most. And now I think that people are starting to realize that we can work virtually and we can do it efficiently. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I wanted to piggyback on something that Travis mentioned. That it's important that you ask how you should be communicating with your team. And I think that that's hard sometimes being a student or being an intern. You feel like maybe you don't have the authority to ask, or you are just shy about it, but you need to know what's expected of you. And so the successful interns that, you know, I've had personally, so I've had virtual and in-person interns over the last couple of years personally, but also through our organization. You know, it seems like that's a huge barrier where students just are afraid to ask. So ask questions, ask how you should communicate. You know, Ty kind of mentioned, depending on the type of questions he had, it depended on what type of communication channels he used. And that's good to ask, you know, should I be using something like GChat or Slack with you if it's something quick? Can I do that quickly with you? Can I text you? Or would you prefer me set up a formal meeting? And that really will depend on your supervisor. And if you don't know that, then you could be struggling. And something else to remember is that an internship is short, right? It's 10 to 12 weeks normally. And so you don't have a lot of time to figure that out organically. So you have to ask and get those expectations up front so that by week 8, you're not like, oh, now I get it. And there's only a couple weeks left.
Yeah, I think that is, we've heard it across now, we've all talked about it, but communication and direct communication and, you know, being proactive, those are all really important. And the idea that it's a really short time span, that it goes really quickly and you need to take the most advantage of it. Just one quick conversation with Tyler and Zara, and we're going to talk about some other stuff, but in the networks that you've built, how do you think will you stay in touch with them? How will that benefit you in your mind moving forward?
Yeah, so I connected with many of my coworkers on LinkedIn. So what I'm planning to do is just making sure I'm updating them with my life, what I'm doing, and then having that constant communication so it can be sustained. And even if they gave me their personal emails, or I'll just connect with them through that way, just making sure that I have that opportunity to try to come back to Contour if I did want to after I graduate. So just making sure that those connections are sustained.
Yeah, same as Zara. I connected with my coworkers on LinkedIn. And I am going to make sure over the next, however long, few months that I'm staying in contact with them while, I possibly think about going back to Lincoln. And even if I don't, it's going to be really good to utilize them as possible references for the future. So don't think that just because you're not going to be going back to the company that you don't need to worry about staying in touch with them. It's always good to build and maintain professional relationships.
That's great, and all true. Keeping those networks active is really important. Lizzie, you touched briefly on this about where things are now and looking at next summer. Do you think that we'll always have an environment, and Travis, you can certainly answer this too, where there are some in person, there are some hybrid, there are some remote? Have we learned a lot of new things and things will move forward a bunch of different ways, or will we go back to the way, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I wish I could predict the future, but what I think is going to happen is I do think we're going to see continued virtual and remote internships, even when it's completely safe to be back in person. I think a lot of employers are realizing how cost effective that is. And some employers I've talked to have realized some of their barriers of not having interns has been desk space, right? They just don't have the space to house an intern. Now that they don't necessarily have to, they're able to take on more interns and do more with them. And so I do think as employers are starting to realize that interns can be really valuable remotely, that we'll continue to see that trend. I think initially, just to be totally frank, there were a lot of employers who were very unsure whether interns could handle remote work. I think we were unsure on whether all employees could handle remote work. But, especially students who may not have had other professional experiences. And now I think students have proven themselves. They can be super productive. They've added a ton of value remotely. And so if that's something that a student wants and it's something that an employer is looking at, I don't see why it wouldn't continue.
Yeah, I'm in 100% in agreement with Lizzie there. For both interns and for our employees, I can't see us. If you next time you get a chance to walk around Moses Cone Hospital, you'll see like executive directors and like VPs, like their office is just jammed in some closet on like the third floor of the hospital, because that's all the space that we have. We already are pressed for space, and when you're in a nonprofit sector, even a big business nonprofit sector like healthcare, every cent counts. So I really think that Cone is going to continue to try to have its employees and interns that can work remotely, if for nothing else than the amazing cost savings that we're getting on commercial real estate. So I think the folks that need to be there will be there, clinical staff, leadership, but the rest of us, and definitely a lot of the business functions, IT functions, I think those are going to stay remote, and we'll probably just do kind of like a WeWork reservation of office space when you want to have your occasional in-person meeting.
Yeah, so adapting, we're all adapting, right? We have adapted in the beginning because we had to, and now we're adapting because we learned some really good things that, we can do this way. Zara, you talked in your internship that you picked up Power BI and some other things. Were there skills that you had to use this summer in your internship in a virtual setting that you didn't know you had, or that you didn't know you would need as much?
I think some of the skills that I didn't think I had was like my communication skills. I really developed that throughout this internship, being able to communicate effectively with managers, and even email etiquette was very important within the internship, making sure you have that direct communication that makes sense and is professional. So those are one of the skills that I built, as well as when I did do my internship project, I was able to develop some leadership skills, making sure that we're on top of everything and just setting goals for my team. So those are some of the skills that I built throughout the internship that were more soft skills and were very technical, but it was very much needed in that role.
That's great. And moving forward, right? So you've now added them to your toolkit, which is a really important thing about internships. Tyler, do you have skills that you weren't sure you would use, but you ended up using them and will benefit moving forward?
Yeah, I have two. One is communication, just like Zara. Obviously, it's much more different from a virtual perspective. So that's something that we've all had to learn. And then second, I would say note-taking, actually. Note-taking is a little bit different when you're virtual. I didn't necessarily use like a notepad. I actually ended up downloading a software for notes and trying to organize them all into different sections based on who I was meeting with in the moment. So yeah, that's just kind of like offhand one. Note-taking was definitely something that I think is really important and something that I worked on a lot this summer. So yeah.
All good skills. And I need that note-taking software. I need to get that since I'm in this virtual world. Travis, when you are hiring full-time employees, or are there specific skills you look for, especially now in this virtual setting, that you're like, okay, that makes that person stand out that students could work on?
Oh yeah, I mean all the major soft skills need to be there, but definitely communication is more important than it's ever been. And I think that getting to go through the hiring process, the way that you present yourself in your interview, the way in which you talk about the examples you have from your background, like I want you to have some of these virtual internship examples that you can share, because the more that you can convince us that you're capable of handling virtual work, that you're able to produce results even in high stress, unpredictable situations, the more likely we are to believe you and say, okay, I think this person can handle a role here. So I think those are the major skills, but obviously being able to work as part of a team, it's not as easy when you can't build that rapport walking from cubicle to cubicle or office to office. So also being comfortable to build the kind of relationships with your team that you need to thrive, to get things done, and also to resolve conflicts as they come up. So I think all the major soft skills that you'll find on some of the guides of the top soft skills to prepare for when looking for jobs are absolutely still a priority for us here.
Izzy, is there, I want you to talk about this because I know I'm going to preface this question, but the idea of being able to describe your internship experience and share your successes in interviewing for your next role, is it important to capture that and make sure you understand that and are able to talk to that for your next role?
Absolutely. And we've talked about how quickly your internship goes, right? It's super fast. So it's easy to kind of forget some of the big things that you did throughout your internship. So keep your own track record of, here are the accomplishments that I've been doing throughout. Here's what I've been commended for. Here's the feedback I received from my supervisors. Take all of that. And when you are in that next interview opportunity or networking opportunity, those are going to be key points you're going to want to talk about. And it sounds kind of like, I'll remember that. Like those were big milestones, but you won't. There's so much that you're doing and you're going to be, just kind of overwhelmed at some points that you will forget some really cool things that you did. So keep a record of it, because talking about it, as Travis mentioned, like, you can talk about your soft skills all day long. You can say, I'm reliable and I have critical thinking and I'm a problem solver. But if you don't have experience to back it up, or you can't really talk to that experience to back it up, it's going to be harder to believe you. So absolutely.
Thanks. I think that's great. And maybe that note-taking could help us remember that in our next job. Amy, I see you, and I know it's question and answer time, but I do want to ask our interns who are here. Tyler, I'll start with you and then move to Zara. Did you achieve your goals? You laid out your goals for us for your internship, and I really appreciate you had that at the beginning, some intention. Did you achieve those things? Oh. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely did accomplish the goals that I had. I mentioned that I wanted to gain clarity of what I wanted to do long term, as far as whether working for a big or small company. And I basically decided that I could work for either and enjoy it. I really enjoyed working for Lincoln. It's a big corporation, so it was a much larger setting, but I did enjoy it a lot. And like I mentioned, I wanted to also develop relationships and connections. Definitely did that. Met a ton of people, not just coworkers, but also I think there were something like 100 other interns across the company. So it was awesome to build that network of student relationships. And lastly, like I mentioned, I wanted to contribute to meaningful projects. And the projects I worked on, I actually worked on, I believe, 8 calculators, and they were getting prepped to be put into the last stage of submission for underwriters. So those projects, those calculators that I created are actually going to be used throughout the entire company. So that was really exciting for me.
That's great, and congratulations on doing that. Sounds like a good summer. Zara, you as well. Did you get what you were looking for out of your internship?
I definitely accomplished most of the goals I set for myself. I wanted to build networks, build technical skills, and gain as much knowledge as I could. I also wanted to have a completed project that they could use even when my internship ended. And I was able to do that through interviewing with people, with different people within the departments, and just gaining a new skill in Power BI. And I also created a report that they can use over and over again, even when my internship ended. So just coming in there with an open mind, having questions for them was very valuable to my internship experience. And overall, I had a great experience this summer.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Amy, I know I've left us a short time for questions and answers. Did you see any that we need to make sure to cover very quickly?
Yeah, there is one question. And I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers and panelists, and you, Bramley, for moderating such an important session. So I just want to note that on the screen right now is the QR code for Brian Gold, which can be scanned on your Suitable app to earn points. For more information on Brian Gold and how to activate or log in your account, please visit the Brian Gold webpage. I've just placed the link in the chat box. So I did see a question come in, Bramley, and I'll throw this to Travis and Lizzie. Someone has asked, when is the best time to do your internship? Your sophomore year, junior year, senior year? When are you engaging with interns in their educational process?
So I think you should try to get an internship every year. I think that the most competitive students as they're graduating have internships their freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. There will be some, depending on your courses. So if you're like IT or accounting or engineering, you may have to have prerequisite courses to be eligible for certain internships. So that might change things for you. But you could still get an internship, maybe doing something else just to get professional experience and just to see a business setting. And so I don't think it's ever too early to apply. I mean, most students will have internships between their junior and senior year, and that's a great time to have them. That's really where you're going to get the meat of your experience. But if you can get internships prior to that, you should.
Yep, definitely. The more internships, the better. I always used to quote the National Association of Colleges and Employers survey data from employers. I know it sounds super fancy, but it was just our guiding light in the Career Center. And we asked employers what was most important to them in making hiring decisions for new candidates. Number 1, an internship with our company. Number 2, an internship in our industry. And then all the other stuff, some of the leadership elements, GPA, some of the traditional trappings of things that you think employers care about, substantially below those 2 things. So if you can get an internship in freshman or sophomore year, just know that it's not as traditional, so it's not going to be as easy, but go for it. As many different experiences as you can get under your belt, it can only help you.
I want to follow up on that real quickly with you all. We've been using the word internship, but we also, I think it's important to mention that often the skills that you'll need to get, a role after you graduate can also be in a part-time job, right? So just because the title might be a little different, there's opportunities to move forward with that and build those transferable skills. Would you all agree? Whether it's titled an internship, a formal internship program, or part-time work, or you can gain skills for those things.
I just want to say, I definitely think that's true. You can absolutely gain skills. One of the things that we have challenges with internal employees at Cone Health is that sometimes you find yourself in a position where even though you're building the skills, the experience isn't substantial enough to help you get to where you want to go. I've actually had some folks where I've recommended, I'm like, go complete a graduate certificate at the Bryan School, go back and enroll in an MBA if you're interested, not just because of the amazing education you're going to get, not just because of the letters after your name, but because it opens up access again to be able to do internships. One of my favorite MBAs from the Bryan School that I pick on when I'm doing LinkedIn stuff is Dave Jenkins. Dave came back and got his MBA after a career spent in the military, and I think he was teaching at Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. But by doing his MBA, he opened himself up to be able to do an internship in operations at Cone, and now he's like the director of this whole chunk of service lines at one of our facilities, and that's a role he took immediately after his internship concluded and his MBA wrapped up. So yeah.
Yes, I love hearing all of that. That was all good things to include. Thank you, Travis. But it's such good experience. And Amy, we have just 2 minutes, I think. Are there more questions we need to be sure to address?
Yeah, there is one more question, and it's a specific question unique to this individual, I think, but I'll broaden it out just a little bit. How important, as an employer looking at someone for an internship, how important is it to include your GPA in your resume? I know there are lots of opinions about it. What are you looking for? Are you necessarily looking for that as a requirement on the resume, or how do you work with that information?
So I definitely think that's industry specific. So what I'm seeing is that if you are like a hard technical, so IT, accounting, engineering, I'm thinking on this again, those really do look more at your GPA than maybe marketing or communications or even finance might. So I think it depends. I think your major GPA might lean more to that because again, they're looking more at, are you competent in the specific skills that we need? And GPA can be one indicator, but I don't think it's somewhere to stress. Now, definitely, do well in your classes, like that is important and you don't want to blow off that. At the same time, like if your GPA is not what you'd hoped it to be, don't let that deter you from applying to something.
As one of my favorite professional development professionals, Tyler Wiersma, would say, like, those are the pieces that help you build towards getting the internship, and then the experience you get in the internship is what you use to help build towards a full-time opportunity. I will say that from the leaders that I've worked with on internships, what's probably more important than just raw academic performance is alignment. If you come into an interview and you have no idea what the department does, if you put in an application and you've not even thought about like what you're going to be doing in this area and what that might mean for our overall mission, it's just not going to go as well. I think our leaders would much rather have somebody who has a better sense of the mission, who really is curious and genuinely wants to learn about that department, than somebody who just has better raw overall performance data behind them. So can't say enough about networking, learning about where you want to go. It'll make those conversations a lot more productive.
Thank you all so much. We're right on time. I have to end this conversation by saying thank you so much to both Lizzie and Travis for joining us and sharing your external insights, so helpful. And I am going to give the major shout out to Tyler and to Zara because you guys definitely maximize your internships. This conversation, you've shared how that happens. And I hope that other students who are on this webinar and moving forward in the Bryan School will do that as well as you two have. And I appreciate your insights. Everyone, thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your time and energy this morning.
Thanks, Bramley. And I'll just close us out today. And thank you again to the speakers and Bramley for moderating the conversation. The next session begins shortly at 12 p.m. and it's titled Fast Track to Your Graduate Degree. Don't forget the B2B party gates open at 5 p.m. this afternoon for free food, t-shirts, a DJ, and a photo booth. Remember, the party is open to Bryan students only and arrive early because supplies are limited. As students, you can enter directly through the gate that is closest to the Bryan School at the baseball stadium. We look forward to seeing you there tonight. Thanks again, everyone.